Of course, is the Pope. We're going to talk about this later, as far as how the church is structured. But he's the main one charged. He is the. There's also, there were 12 apostles, right? Well, Paul calls himself an apostle, but he never was one of the 12 in the sense that was actually called like Matthew and Peter and the rest of them, right? Okay. And did you ever notice that within the 12 apostles, that Jesus singles Peter out? Actually, you read the passage last week, if you were here, remember, where he says, "You are Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. So I give you keys, kingdom of heaven. And what you hold bound on earth will be held bound in heaven, and what you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Okay, the binding and loosing he actually gave to all the apostles, but Peter is the only one to whom he gave the keys. We'll talk about that more later. That's actually very, very significant. He's giving Peter a certain position amongst the 12 apostles. And that takes hold right away. Even Paul, in his own writings, we know that there were times that he traveled to where Peter was. And one time he challenged him, kind of called him on the carpet. Nobody's above reproach. But he wanted Peter's approval. Why did he want Peter's approval? Because Peter was from the get-go the recognized head. That's why. In essence, Peter was the first pope. That's what the pope is. And he too has an unbroken succession for 2,000 years now. Because Peter had a successor, he did, next guy, all the way down to the present day, Francis. He's the successor of Peter. And that's why he's still the head amongst the other apostles or the other bishops. So you see, it's the same thing. It's been the same way for all these years. Make sense? Not too shocking? Okay. Now you got your phone call. That's all of that is part of how Jesus keeps his guarantee. Gates of the netherworld should not prevail against it. Of course, he's the head of the church. Jesus, of course, is the real head of the church. But he just as he gave his apostles this charge, he's still giving it. Not just to the apostles, that's actually to the whole church, to every one of us. He still gives us that charge. We have a mission. Okay, I'm getting off now. Okay. It does explain in this little brown box. Did a pretty nice job, I think, in your leaflet. And it distinguishes tradition with a capital T or a small t. Okay? Things that are capital T tradition, those are things that are core beliefs that have not changed since the beginning of the church and will not change till the end of the church. They simply will not change. I think it gave one example in there. What was it? Oh, resurrection of Jesus. That ought to be a gift. Yeah, we're going to keep believing that. We believe that all along. That it really is his body and blood in the Eucharist. Yeah, that's been a non-negotiable core belief all along. We still believe it. We're always going to believe it. That doesn't change. Those are core things. But there are other things that do change. that aren't some of those core beliefs. You know, let's see if I can think of an example. Well, okay, here's the way we celebrate Mass is fundamentally remains the same, but things about it certainly change. You know, I don't, Marilyn could probably speak to that, where before the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, Mass was celebrated in what was called the Tridentine Rite, established at the Council of Trent in the 1600s. Whoa, was that different? I mean, I've never been to one, but I've seen a tape. I mean, the priest had his back to everybody, all in Latin, and you know, frankly, I get the impression anyway that a lot of times people really didn't know what was going on. And so they would be out there in the pew and they'd pray the rosary, you know, and that's why they started ringing the bells to let people know, okay, this is the point we're at. You know, that's it. Some people still do that. It's a carryover, but it actually had a purpose back then. We don't do it that way now. Now the priest faces everybody, and all the words are translated into various languages so that it makes sense to the people in that place. For us, that's English. It's different, but it's fundamentally the same. Fundamentally, the same things happen. It still becomes the body and blood of Christ. But yet it's changed. So, and believe me, it's changed a lot from the first century. You know, this comes out of the Jewish Passover. Well, Jews didn't eat anything like what we eat. They were highly ritualized meals, even where people sat. But they, first of all, they didn't sit. You know, you ever notice the term reclined at table in Scripture? That's because they reclined at table. They would lay on their left side, propped up on their left elbow. And that's how they ate. It's just the way they did it. It's common. You know, that's why, for example, that woman could weep all over Jesus' feet. See, she wasn't crawling around under the table crying. You know, they were just sticking out there. They were easy to get to. So, it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. So those are the little T things, okay? It's quite a picture, isn't it?
So the picture of the Passover then is correct that we see.
That's correct. That's Leonardo da Vinci's or whomever's rendition, but that is probably not historically accurate at all, correct?
And all this time ago it was.
No, more than likely they reclined at table, just like any good Jews would. We'll talk more about Passover when we talk more in depth about the Eucharist. That's down the road a bit. So, does that, you following what tradition is, you think? Go back to the beginning example. We get to know other people when they reveal themselves to us in many ways, but two ways are by their own words, but also what other people say about them. That's kind of how Scripture and tradition work. Okay, you're either ready for a nap or something.
Just thinking.
Thinking? Okay. Wheels are spinning. Any questions?
I seem to remember a long time ago that one of the generals, and I'm gonna, I can't say his name, but it was one of the big generals of the time, that he got them all together and said, establish all the correct writings, put them in together. It comes from history. I want to say Hannibal, but I don't think it was Hannibal.
Correct writings of what?
Of all the of